Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CalSTRS board meeting. Jennifer, would you take the roll, please?
Controller Yi.
Here.
For the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Prezan.
Here.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Here.
Mr. Tang.
Here.
Ms. Hendricks.
Here.
Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Ms. Erden.
Here.
Mr. Gunning.
Here.
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Ruffino. And for the Director of Finance, Ms. Whitaker. Chairperson Keeley, you have a quorum. And I do have a short announcement on public statements. The CalSTRS board meetings are live web streamed, video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. Individuals who wish to address the board should wait for the 10-minute public comment period at the end of the agenda item the speaker wishes to address. For comments not pertaining to a specific agenda item, there will be an opportunity for additional statements at the end of the open session. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to comment. However, if there is not enough time for each public speaker to have 3 minutes, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. To protect the privacy of speakers under the age of 18 who wish to address the board, only their first name and affiliated organization may be provided, but other personal identifying information such as their last name, age, or school may not be shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll entertain a motion to approve today's agenda with some flexibility, please. It's been moved, properly seconded, without objection. The agenda has been approved. We're going to begin something new at our board meetings. Vice Chair Hendricks and I, we had an idea, and I know when I called Cassandra, she said, "Oh, they have an idea." They have an idea.
A rare day.
Every once in a while. We have
And I want to thank, before we begin, I want to thank our staff, our incredible communication staff under the leadership of Ms. Schilling, Teresa, for her leadership and the ability for her and her team to execute on the idea. And the idea that Ms. Hendricks and I had on one of our walks was, you know, we've been on the board for a while. We've had the great honor to serve this organization and the educators of our state. And we all know that the mission and purpose of CalSTRS is to ensure the retirement security of California's educators. And we thought it would be appropriate for us to begin being mindful of our time, to begin each board meeting with a short video that features a member of CalSTRS, an educator. And our intent is that these short videos will represent the full diversity of our membership, age, gender, ethnicity, cultural, and today is the inaugural video, and we intend for it to be, I was like, can we be 3 to 5 minutes? And they said, well, 2 minutes is better, it really captures people's attention. I think today is 4 minutes, and given the amount of time we spend preparing for board meetings, at board meetings, yesterday we spent hours talking about billions of dollars in investments, et cetera. We believe that it's important for us to always remind ourselves, top of mind, who we serve, what our mission is, and no better way to do it through a video. And Teresa and her team did a terrific job. So I'll turn it over to the staff to present us with the first video.
My name's Lance Gunnarsson, and I've been teaching for about 27 years. What got me into teaching was I knew that I could teach woodworking, and I loved woodworking, so I can teach one of my passions. I started in industry and started building homes and making cabinets and actually building furniture. Woodworking was always a passion of mine. California State Fair recognized me in 2012 as a featured teacher. I was president of the California Industrial and Technology Education Association. I'm still on their board. I also am a musician. I like to play piano and I play a little guitar. We actually make guitars in my class, so I should learn to play it, wouldn't you think? So I did. And what I love about this, it's inspired many of my students to pick up and learn an instrument. So this is one of the projects that my advanced students make. We make this from scratch. It's not a kit. Like most teachers, I'm certain, you get in the STRS system because you become a teacher and you don't think about it that much. Later, you realize that retirement's knocking at the door at some point, and how did it sneak up on you? How did I get here? And then you start going to seminars and calling and going, I need to make some appointment. I need to start making some plans. Teaching is a profession where you get into it because you love it. You don't expect to make a lot of money, but you do expect to have a decent retirement from working that hard for those many years. But having said that, STRS has done a pretty good job with my money, and I've done a reasonable job of keeping up with what I need to keep up with. This is spun on a lathe, and we make pens out of little blocks of wood, drill a hole through them, spin them to a shape, put a finish on them, put the parts together, and voila. So a while back, I got contacted out of the blue by someone claiming to be from Disney. Since so many of our career tech ed programs in the trades had closed over the last 40 years, they wanted to get young people interested in making things again. So I was on this Disney program called Shop Class. I got to work with a couple of very talented young people, and we knocked it out of the park the first time. So this is our laser cutter and engraver. Fantastic machine. It can do some amazing things, so you can add detail to the woodwork we do, and made us more cutting edge as a career and technical education program, having machines like this that are used in industry all the time. You know, I want to put in a real positive plug for the CalSTRS board for their net zero initiative. We have architecture and engineering programs that are doing green design and energy efficient design. We have auto programs that are starting up electric vehicle programs and using alternative fuels. And so it's just a real positive thing, and I think they're on the right track with that. We do this thing called the Toy Shop, and my students build a toy to give away to the community kids. And we invite those community kids in from the different elementary schools for a big party that we have here. We have everything wrapped in paper, we have games for the kids to play, we have music, and we decorate this place like you can't believe. We really transform this place into a winter wonderland. If I could do my career over again, I'd plan for my retirement earlier. That's what I'd do differently. Otherwise, I wouldn't change a thing. I've had a great life. I really enjoy teaching kids and giving them skills I know that they'll be able to use in their future and in their life. I'm hoping that when I have more time, more free time, I'll be able to join that rock and roll band I always wanted to be in and become a star.
Thanks to our staff for a great first video. So thank you. And a terrific way to kick off our meetings of our own mission, purpose, and who we actually serve. With that, I'll turn it over to Cassandra.
Thank you, Chair Keeley. I'm going to open up the CEO report, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to give you some additional updates on the headquarters expansion project and leasing opportunities that we're exploring. But what I wanted to acknowledge in the report and highlight is the recognition that we received for our Leadership Recognition Award by the National Association of Government Defined Benefit Administrators. This award recognizes the brightest ideas and most innovative solutions from across the public sector in the defined contribution industry. CalSTRS was selected for its outstanding achievements for the COVID response category, and specifically for its work on the CalSTRS Pension to National Retirement Security Month campaign executed by our Retirement Readiness Division. So I wanted to acknowledge the staff for all of their work in the innovative ideas and solutions that they executed during this past year. They have done a fantastic job, and I just wanted to thank them and acknowledge that to the board. The other thing I wanted to highlight, and this is for our ombuds, because he was going to be giving a presentation, but he had a family emergency, so I'm going to be the ombuds twice today. We had prepared an annual ombuds report. It is an attachment to this item, so for you to review, and it really explains the history of the function of the ombuds and the extraordinary work that Mr. Genie is providing to the organization, and the connectedness that he provides to our membership, and the resolution to some pretty challenging complexities in our with some of the benefits issues that some of them may participate in. So I just wanted you to look at that report when you have the opportunity, and Mark will be back to do a presentation at a later time. And then I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Great, thanks, Cassandra. I'm going to give an update on the construction of the HQE. A lot is changing. It's changing daily. And so as of the writing and the board materials that we provided to you, there's been some changes since, so I want to go over those. And I've got Greg Levi with me today to talk about our leasing opportunities and where we are in that, because I know it's really important to the board that we're looking at that, and it's important to us to be able to fill the building with folks once we move into the headquarters expansion. So the construction of the project is about 70% complete, and it's really, really making good progress. The exterior of the building is getting buttoned up. In fact, one of the man lifts is coming down in mid-September. And so once that comes down, that part of the building can be buttoned up. The remaining man lift will stay until the elevators are ready in the building, and that's going to be about the December timeframe when we can actually use the interior elevators to move about the building. The interiors, the work on the interiors, you haven't seen it because you can only see it from the outside right now, but it's going like gangbusters. There's lots of people, lots of energy on the project right now, and they're doing a lot of work on the interiors. So if you walked through right now, you would see that ceiling tiles are going in. You'll see the raised floor is happening. You'll see that there's walls that are being painted and textured, and the terrazzo floor in the lobby area is going in. So it's really starting to take shape, and we can really see our vision coming to realization, so that's pretty exciting. But I want to talk a little bit about the schedule. So as of the writing of the board materials, we were showing a mid-April date. And remember, we had agreed that the March 17th date was a reasonable date to finish the project based on everything that was going on within the project and the work that was having to happen on the curtain wall and all of the fire inspections that were happening. And so I'm really pleased to say that since the writing, we've been able to pull that schedule back to the end of March. There were some challenges that we had on the curtain wall that still needed some extra attention, and we were able to solve those without any additional work or any additional days. So that's very positive. But I wanted to let you know that the burn rate on the project is about $110,000 a day. So days matter. So we're really watching the team closely, and we want to make sure that they keep on budget because it matters to us. I'm happy to say that even with the mid-April date, mid-April date, we have enough money in the budget to finish the project based on what the board has approved. So that's good news. So any day that we can pull forward is just money that we're not going to spend. And so again, the team is behind me in the back row, Michelle and Dave from Ridge Capital. I've asked them to be here because it's really important to them too. And so I want you to know that we're all in this together, and we're going to make sure that we keep DPR on task and we can finish this project within the range that we feel is acceptable. So that is where we are from schedule and budget. And I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to Greg Levi right now and ask him to give you some information on where we are from a leasing perspective.
I'm Greg Levi. I'm with Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL, and I'm the managing director here in Sacramento. My partner and I have been charged with the leasing of the tower. It's been an interesting couple years, obviously, with the pandemic, and the office market's been the hardest hit portion of the real estate sectors. Private sector tenants are grappling with how to return to work still. This has taken longer than we ever anticipated. And, they're adopting some sort of hybrid environment, which there's a lot of analysis about, but, it appears that we are finally going really in the right direction. The public sector has been kind of doing the same thing, trying to decide when and how they're going to come back to work. And that's even been more exacerbated because they've been building through the pandemic, and they've put 3.5 million square feet of their own space on the market as well. So all of that has been challenging and unprecedented. The good thing I would say is the building that you have is the best building in Sacramento. We have an aging inventory of office buildings. Really, nothing's been built of significance in our private sector buildings that could be leased to private sector since 2009, 2010. So most of these buildings were built at a different level of quality than yours. So it is a prime amount of space, and it's one of our best buildings that in the inventory that's available. We've been working with GSEC, which is one of our economic councils that try to recruit companies, and it's on the forefront of their lists of potential buildings in our market as they've tried to recruit new companies to come to our market. In fact, they had they used one of your boardrooms for one of their programs, their seminars recently. And that was with a bunch of site selectors, which are people that are out looking on behalf of companies. As far as things we're doing going forward, we have we had mentioned before, we have a web page, we have state-of-the-art brochures, floor plans, digital footprints, videos, virtual tours that you can walk through the entire building. But that's what we were doing during COVID because people wouldn't come out and tour. Now that people are starting to reemerge and do this, we recently took on this developer showcase sponsorship, which we'll be able to highlight the building through, and it's primarily to the real estate industry, brokers primarily, and we'll have a running video of the tour of the building. And the other thing we're going to do is the latest thing is we're going to start broker open houses, which will allow brokers to come visit and walk the building. A lot of people have never been in the building before. It's always been kind of a structure that admired from afar, but have never seen the inside. And it's one of the buildings that you guys were doing. It's funny, we do these surveys about how we want to get people to come back to work, and it's things like daycare on site, food service on site, outdoor areas, lots of natural light. And this is something that CalSTRS had already built into their system, which are part of your culture already. So we want to get all the brokers out here to see how magnificent the building is. Hopefully they can relay it to their clients as we go forward. So let's
If
come.
I could add, so I actually toured DGS through the building with Melissa and Jeff Isham on Tuesday of this week because they had not seen the inside of our building. They had come over to the cafe and eaten many times, but they had never seen the inside of our building. And so the purpose of that is I really wanted them to remember us and to think of us for all kinds of different reasons, whether it be a full-time tenant or whether we're just an option for swing space. They've built all of these buildings, these state-owned buildings in the region. And what they told me is they don't know that they'll know for over a year as to those agencies that are going into those buildings, whether they're going to come in a hybrid or they're not going to come back at all. So that's the challenge that we have right now is organizations have not made the decision yet as to what their long-term plans are going to be. But they had smiles on their face. They thought our building showed wonderfully. It's on this side of the river. I think people forget that there's quality space on this side of the river, and so they'll definitely keep us in mind. So I'm really glad that we did that because I didn't realize that they hadn't seen the inside of our building before. And of course, our layout really, it's almost turnkey for state agencies because we have the open space, the offices, and the conference rooms. So we're really hoping that they'll, I said, I know we own our own buildings, but we're part of the state, so please remember us. So.
And just to add to that, one of the biggest problems with the state of California is always the furniture budget. And whenever private sector tenants or landlords are trying to lease to them, the state's always trying to figure out how to get the furniture paid for as well. And you have really beautiful furniture in place that potentially they could just step right into, especially from a swing space or ideally, it's actually a pretty good layout for the state already, so.
So with that, we can take any questions you might have.
Mr. Persson.
Thank you very much, and I want to commend staff and all of the good work that our consultants have been doing over the years. It's been a trying time. I think Sharon and I, who sit on the committee that has been overseeing this for the last year and a half or 2 years, and the chairman was there before, so he also understands how much work and effort has been put into sort of fighting the battle to get this building built. And we appreciate all of the good work, and we look forward to a date that will be no later than March 31st. But I do want to ask Greg a couple of questions about pricing of square footage in Sacramento today, and has it softened? How you foresee, the pricing of commercial real estate and terms being the length of leases, have they become shorter? Just sort of an economic overview of what the market looks like today, and knowing that, as one of our consultants has commended to us, that predictions are hard to make because you can never be right, maybe what you can see in the future.
Well, I think what we've seen over the last 2 years, especially from the larger occupiers of space, is because of their indecision as to what their footprint should look like, they've done shorter term renewals and shed some space, say 20% on a regular basis. What the landlords have been doing, they're scared to death about losing these tenants, so they've let them shed their space, whereas they probably would have taken a harder line in the past and reduced their rates. So yeah, they have come down a little bit. When you track the actual statistic as far as across the board, they've only come down a little bit. It hasn't been that much, but and that's really the charging the rate, the actual base rates. But what it has increased is the concessions, the tenant improvements, and the free rent concession, the restacking, giving them cash to restack their plan, things like that. But overall, we have not seen a huge drop in the rates yet. It's been a slight drop.
And how do you foresee the impact of 3.5 million new square foot of space coming onto the market that the state is going to contribute?
Yeah, well, I mean, prior to the pandemic, that space was oversubscribed, right? So it looked like it wouldn't have any impact at all as they tore down old buildings. Now we don't know. We've heard a lot of conflicting stories. I don't think the state knows yet exactly what's going to happen there. I mean, I think what it comes down to is how is the state going to reoccupy space? Are they going to share desks, or is everybody going to need their own desk? And are you going to come back? If you're coming back 3 days a week, are you going to have a set schedule so you could share desks with other people, or are they going to need their own space? And the indication so far has been that they don't want to share desks. Everybody wants their own space. They don't want to have to put their stuff away at the end of the day. They want the flexibility. They can come in on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then next week they might change it up. So they don't want to have to reschedule it. So that's good for an office footprint to stay consistently the same size. So we just don't know about how the state's going to reoccupy that space and what that impact will be yet. It's not, so far, I would say they have not the relocations that they've done and the private sector buildings that they've vacated have been planned in their sequencing plan. They haven't done any surprises. The big renewals that are out there have happened. They haven't done anything with them.
Just one final follow-up question. Do you see any advantage moving forward with the concern about fossil footprints that these buildings, that our buildings have in the marketplace? Is there any have you noticed any increased sensitivity to those kinds of issues by potential tenants?
Gosh, I feel like it was almost more of a issue prior to the pandemic. Corporate users were very focused on that. If you're talking about the fact that the LEED certification and the clean buildings and stuff like that, the chatter we have now is it's still important, but they won't pay more for it. Everybody wants a really good, clean building, but they don't want it to cost more. It's just the way it is right now. I think right now it's just because there's so much confusion still in the marketplace. It's once we get some clarity, it'll matter a lot again. But right now, it's not the top of mind. But that's a good question. I mean, that's going to come back.
Well, thank you for your efforts, and we hope you continue to work this hard, because keep in mind that opening video that you saw, every dollar that we save or we can make, is inures to the benefit of our members. So thank you.
Yeah, that video was great. And we're going to lease this building. I mean, it's just been untried times. I mean, this is a great building. It's in a really solid, location. I mean, everything about it is perfect. I've been doing this for 35 years, and we're going to lease this building. It's just been a crazy time.
Thank you.
Ms. Hendricks, followed by Controller Yi.
Great, thanks, Harry. And thanks, Greg, for taking the time to be here today, and for Lisa for inviting. And I want to just do a shout out to our colleagues in the back. Thank you for being here today, because this is we've been through a lot. I think Bill Prezant and I and all of you on lots of Zoom calls to just try and monitor and appreciate Lisa, you as always the tried and true one in the middle, keeping it all together. I know it's been a long journey, and I'm looking forward to celebrating and seeing being in that expansion after March. I think, you're raising, Greg, for me, I mean, as trustees of this board, I think one of the biggest things we do is we monitor risk, to the fund and expenditures and timelines. And so some of the comments and answers to Bill's questions, I'd like to just get more of a sense, and maybe Lisa from you too, and I know a lot of this is in flux, so I read a lot about the transition back to work. I find it fascinating and interesting how it almost seems like different workforces have different, needs or desires on how they return to work and the use for office space. Can you just talk a little bit about, I appreciate what you're saying at the end about we will lease this space. I mean, that's what I want to hear on the one hand. I wonder if you could help flesh out some of when we don't know things, that sounds like more risk to me when I hear that. So can you maybe talk through where we are now in August, I guess September through March? And we're looking at the transition, Lisa, that we've been talking about moving our staff into the expansion and then, having some folks here and then leasing out the rest of the space. Can you kind of just talk through that timeline? And Greg, as a professional thinking about leasing office space, since we don't know what's going to happen with workers coming back or what the needs are going to be, and we don't have kind of some solid, I mean, we have some leads, but maybe not the most solid leads in terms of commitment. How should we be thinking about this time? Because I'm not nervous, but I'm certainly eager to know that it could be a smooth transition for our staff to move over, to lease this time, and have that timing be perfect, right? So can you just help us think through that a little bit in terms of the risk piece? Because it's, 6 months, September, October, November, December, 7 months from now, and how we think about that transition and I guess the likelihood, to your point, Greg, of how likely do you think we can make a smooth transition of leasing this while we're making the transition of our staff over?
Let me just start. Well, one thing that came to mind was, just the absorption, our absorption of office space is typically, 500,000 to 1 million square feet a year. The last 2 years has been significantly negative. So it's been going the wrong direction, right? It's been, a couple million square feet of negative absorption for the last couple of years. So that's just happened. As far as, when we'll find somebody, if you're thinking as far as phasing in, I mean, I would assume, if I had to crystal ball it a little, most of these tenants are going to look, a longer term tenant is going to look a year in advance. State of California could be looking, it just depends. I mean, they could be needed in 2 months, they could need it in 6 months. And then there's some swing space type of requirements that Lisa mentioned earlier, which is a really good idea because we have space that somebody could literally step into. I mean, as far as transitioning, I mean, we're anticipating getting probably a couple leases pretty close to at least one floor around mid next year, maybe 2 floors. I mean, they're going to be larger users that are looking at the building. There could be one user that absorbs 3 floors. It's not. We're not going to be, we're not going to be doing a typical office building, which would be chopping all these different floors up into small spaces. So I would anticipate mid next year we're going to have a couple floors leased, and then continue to absorb, 50 to 100,000 square feet a year.
And if I could just add, remember when we started talking about the expansion, we were at capacity in our building, and that was the whole reason why we talked about expansion. And there's some business areas, like this 16th floor in particular, where we don't have enough office space for our attorneys and that sort of thing. So if we move, let's just say we get the substantial completion date at the end of March, and then this facilities team takes a month to ready the building. We've got to get the copiers and the printers in place. We've got to, put the supplies in the building. We got to get the cafe ramped up and all of those things. Probably it'll take a month, and then we'll begin transitioning folks that are going to move to the new building over to the new building. We don't have there's no risk there. We did this for this building, and I think that's going to go really smoothly. And then what we have to do is we have to come back in this building and do some of that restack, right? So investments is going to grow into another floor. We've got people that are sitting maybe on the 16th floor now that are going to be on the 3rd floor. And so we've got some restack work to do that'll take a couple of months as well. And once that work is done, then we would be ready to then do a tenant improvement for someone else. We could always, if we get an opportunity though, for someone that needs the space sooner, we'll do whatever it takes. We'll have people teleworking on those floors or what have you in order to get people in. We want to be really creative with the way we offer our space. And that swing space is great. It might be also, we use a floor for other state agencies that have given up all their space that need a place to meet as an all staff or something. Just, we're thinking about everything, so.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the report and just great progress and work. This is kind of a side issue, but I wanted to see if you had any thoughts about what has happened in terms of ongoing maintenance of the existing office building inventory. And I only speak from a personal experience that both of my offices that we lease for the State Controller's Office have had major maintenance issues, water main leaks, and the like. So has that been an issue during the pandemic in terms of just the maintenance?
300 Capitol Mall, is that one you're referring to? Yeah. I think that one is kind of an anomaly. I would say there are a few other buildings that have had issues like that. And we've actually approached the Department of Insurance in that building to try to move over here a couple times and didn't get anywhere, and they renewed. But that was part of the strategy was, hey, you've got a Class A building right here that it would be great. I haven't seen a lot of issues as far as the maintenance. I mean, they're not being used as much, so they shouldn't have that many problems. But that's one of the older Class A high-rise buildings in town. The other one is 801 K Street, which is actually not quite as old, but is going to be, almost 30% occupied pretty soon as state tenants continue to move out of it. And that one's a pretty poorly maintained building as well.
All right, thank you.
Betty, we have some leasing space for you here.
Yeah, but her term,
That's true, I guess, that's true.
Actually, if you have space in Los Angeles, we just lost our floor from a water main leak,
Oh, my
so
goodness.
just completely caved. So,
Jeez.
Don't see any other committee members with questions. Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Sandra?
Okay, we are moving to item 3, which is the notice of board elections. Again, I'm going to be the ombuds for this item. This is an action item, and it's to execute the approval of the attached resolution to adopt the notice of the election announcing the 2023 election of active employee members to the Teachers Retirement Board. Next year, CalSTRS will be conducting the 6th election of the 3 members of the board who represent active CalSTRS members and participants. The 4-year terms of those elected in 2023 will begin on January 1 of 2024. CalSTRS does have regulations concerning the election process, and those regulations require the board to approve the issue a notice of election which announces the nomination and election period, provides information on eligibility and the nomination process, and provides guidelines on qualifications for becoming a candidate. CalSTRS will post the notice of election adopted by the board on our website, and we are going to announce the approval of this notice in the upcoming CalSTRS Connections, the CalSTRS publication mailed to active members. The candidate information packet is one of your attachments. Within that packet is the draft notice of election. This is similar to that adopted in previous elections and is consistent with existing regulations and past practices. And the draft before you requires candidates to collect 250 signatures of active members to qualify for the ballot. CalSTRS recently surveyed 6 retirement systems from around the country to determine a reasonable signature requirement. We found that the average number of signatures was 270. CalSTRS has required 250 signatures in all 5 past elections. So we are recommending keeping that signature requirement at the current number of 250 as it represents a serious base of support, but not so large that it is overly burdensome. I'd like to highlight some of the key relevant dates for the election, which is on page 4 of the packet. With the adoption of the notice of election that will begin the nomination period, candidates will have until January 10th of 2023 to submit the nomination forms and petition signatures. On February 21st, we will announce the name of the qualified candidates. The election will then be held from September 29th through November 30th of 2023. The person who receives a plurality of the votes will be declared the winner, and their term will begin on January 1 of 2024. So with that, I will be happy to hand any questions to Lisa.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Brian's here as well, for any detail.
So
That's
there's a
that's my own buzz
resolution,
report.
that needs to be approved by the board. Mr. Brisson?
Thank you very much. I'd love to ask a question of either you or Lisa, but my question is for Brian, and that is just to assure that you've reviewed where this is consistent with the law and regulations, and with regard to and if I'm wrong on this one, and with regard to the number of petition signatures needed, it's consistent with what we've done in the past.
Yes, I've been reviewing this as it's been put together. We've looked at it from, even our Office of Ethics and Accountability has reviewed it, and it is consistent. That is the number that we've used before. And so everything in here is copacetic.
And then I'd move adoption.
I second it.
It's been moved by Mr. Brisson to adopt the resolution, seconded by Ms. Erden. Any other questions or discussion? I do see Ms. Yamamoto, you're still in the queue.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that when you said the election results, it's just the plurality and not a majority, correct? I just wanted that to be clarified.
On the
Thank
record?
you.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Seeing no other members in the queue, Jennifer, will you take the roll, please?
Sure. Controller Yi? Aye. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Yes.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Erden?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Brings us to item 4, which is the Pension Solution Project update. This is also an action item, and we have members of staff and our consultant here this morning. Morning, gentlemen. Who's taking the lead? Mr. Perez, good morning.
Good morning, members of the board, Chairman Keeley, Bill Perez, Chief Benefits Officer, and Executive Co-Sponsor of Pension Solution Project. So we are here this morning for two purposes. One, to provide an update on Pension Solution activities. And then the other is the action item you referred to, which would be for a request for increase of funding on the Pension Solution Project by an amount of $30 million, would bring the Pension Solution Project from $304.8 million to $334.8 million. We have determined sources for funding, which I'll get into a little bit later. But in terms of update on where we stand today, my colleague Ashish Jain and I are pleased to announce that we have reached a formal agreement with Sagitech Solutions after much spirited discussion. And we will be providing some highlights as to the 10-page statement of work, which will direct Sagitech in collaboration with us during the transition period through June of 2023. During that time, CGI will continue to provide essential services such as system maintenance, and we will be working on a series of activities inclusive of 8 specific work streams that Sagitech Solution will be involved in. The primary focus that we will be looking to have them address, and first priority, will be to look at system quality. So included in that will be an analysis of opportunities for improvement that will be inclusive of testing methodology, as well as potentially also application development design. And we're going to be working through the 8 work streams to best leverage the collaboration with team resources for testing. In addition to that, they will also be focused on reducing the current backlog of defects and continue to address essential services such as design and development, system testing, and user acceptance testing support. So as part of that agreement, we would be seeking approval for funding purposes to leverage $15,865,000 from the Teachers Retirement Fund Support Appropriations Fund. And that would be derived in two components as follows. $8,007,000 would be from fiscal year 2020-2021, and $7,858,000 would be derived from fiscal year 21-22. For the remaining $14,135,000, which would comprise this time and materials contract, we would be leveraging budget authority from the Information Technology Project Fund appropriations, as well as internal reserves. With that, I would like to pass it over to my colleague and consultant for the independent project oversight report on the status of pension solution activities. Mr. Graham Finley.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Graham Finley, Grant Thornton, here to present just a few comments around our most recent independent oversight report. As Bill mentioned, we're now in an interim period with the interim services agreement signed with Sagitech, so that the series of activities that are underway now for the next 9 months or so are a little different than they have been, during the period with CGI. And so, as you may have seen, we revised the structure of our oversight report, really to focus on the various work streams that are going to be underway, from knowledge transfer from the CGI team to Sagitech and CalSTRS, to continuing project work, as Bill mentioned, and additionally, and particularly importantly in our perspective, the development of the strategy for one or more future RFPs and the actual development of those. So our intent over the next number of months is to focus our reporting on the value and progress being delivered across these different work streams, and then also to identify any significant risks around these work streams and to assess whatever mitigation activities are underway. We'd welcome any feedback or suggestions that you have around either the format or the content of that report to make it most useful to you. One update I would like to provide in terms of the content of the report since we submitted the item is that we've been an active participant in a lot of the discussions that have been happening over recent weeks on procurement strategy. And I have to say we're very encouraged by both the sort of the tone and content of those conversations. We've seen, I think, an exhibition of imagination and openness to new ideas. So not simply sort of paving the same structure that we had in the past with CGI, but also a real diligence about understanding pros and cons of various options. So I'm pretty confident that at this point, the CalSTRS executives in fairly short order are going to have some well thought out options to choose from around procurement. And we continue to believe it's probably one of the most significant strategic decisions that CalSTRS has to make in the balance of the calendar year. And so we're going to be paying particular attention to that. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Finley. Any board members with questions for Ashish, Bill, or Graham? Ms. Yamamoto.
Hi, thanks for the report. This is all it's like deja vu. When I first got on the board, we talked about this project and how it was from the start project and how it looked at that. So it's really come a long way, and thanks everybody for your work and just kind of holding on, staying with all the efforts that have been going on. I've been receiving the reports and trying to keep as informed as I can. So, appreciate all the work, and so thank you. The only question the thing that held out to me on your report, Graham, is the health assessment. You talked about a third-party vendor. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how that looks, and what do we expect from it anyway?
make a brief comment, and then Ashish can sort of fill in with any further details. So yes, there's a third-party vendor that's been brought on board to provide a health assessment of where the project is, primarily focused around contributions to help plan the future for the project. We had some concern when we wrote the report a while ago that the direction of that might have been more backwards looking than we thought was appropriate. We had conversations with Ashish and the rest of the CalSys team and IV&V, and it ended up we were all on the same page pretty much in terms of our perspective about what the health assessment should be focused on. And so Ashish, acted to sort of refocus it in a way that I think we all felt was more appropriate. And we're actually waiting for the first deliverables from that assessment to come very soon, within the matter of a week or so. And we're looking forward to see the content of that. So Ashish, anything else you want to say?
Yeah. So Karen, the health assessment we're doing for a couple of reasons. First of all, we are in this journey for long. So we were just thinking whatever lesson learned, we don't have to repeat the lesson learned. I think we are very committed that how we can pivot what we learned so far. What we were hearing that we have IPOC and IV&V and our own team with the assessment, and then we have vendor, everybody was giving a little different take, what is done means. Like someone is saying 50%, our previous vendor was saying 99%, and someone is saying 70%. So we thought that maybe we'll take the independent outside voice and just look back as well as the forward looking. Now we are looking forward. I think whatever happened, I think we're committed to make all those changes, whatever lesson learned so far. We don't have to repeat that one, and we are very committed from the executive team, from the project team, from our business sponsors. So I think when Graham was talking about in there how we will use, you heard about the requirements. We have so many requirements, and then requirements are like 100,000 feet level or 5,000 feet level. How we can pivot in a way that if we are bringing a new system integrator, they can understand that piece. So we are mitigating the risk for the future, that how we can put our hand around in there, and how the vendor community, the future vendor community, in there, that they will bid on this. They're confident that they're bidding what they're bidding for.
So morale is good and everybody's kind of on board and.
I was smiling when, I chit-chat with a few of you, this is a long time. I'm feeling very confident and happy that we are all parties working together. And there's one goal, that how we will make this project successful. From the vendor, from our team, executive team, the oversight, everybody is just not debating now, it's not going there, why this is a bug, or is an enhancement, or, so I think that's the vibes we are seeing in the ground.
Just holding hands and going across the finish line together.
Yeah, I think this is a really, after a long time, I'm feeling happy that, everybody's come together for one voice, that how we will make this project successful.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think just to add to that, one element that I feel is important and is already evident in the engagement and interaction during this interim service period is that for the first time, we actually have direct access to the application developer of the Neospin platform, upon which this solution will be based. And everything from the discussion and negotiation to the point of reaching agreement has been very collaborative. As you might expect, they have a vested interest, Sagitech Solution does, in ensuring that this project is successful. And so we are very confident moving forward in collaboration, at least during this interim period, until we are able to put forth the procurement to find a system integrator to take us to implementation.
When is that? I forget.
The target date will be, at present, it would be aligned with June of 2023, although we'll be coming to you probably in the March timeframe, and I'll have my colleague Julie Underwood correct me if I'm wrong on that, with a budget proposal moving ahead of that procurement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Controller Yi, followed by Mr. Prasad.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the update, and really a lot of thanks to the entire project team. this is what I think is a healthy reset of sorts, a major reset. But I do think that, to Graham's point, the fact that we have this opportunity to think more expansively and openly about how we move forward in this replanning stage, I think is really important. And obviously, looking at continuing to keep the board informed, relative to the status of all of that. I did want to ask, and this is probably going to be part of Graham's report going forward, the work streams, I think, are really critical to really kind of think about the project along those lines. And so really grateful for kind of reorienting our thinking around that. But to Karen's point, I think at some point we want to just kind of start to attach some timeframes around some of these to the extent that that's feasible. It's not to say we're going to work towards, necessarily a hard deadline, but I do think that you have so many moving parts and so many of them interrelated that we want to just be sure that all of those are getting accomplished in a satisfactory manner, with the expectation that, this board with our oversight role have some idea about just the timeframe associated with each. So that'd just be a request.
Thank you, Controller Yee.
Thank you.
Mr. Persant?
Well, first of all, I think it should be acknowledged that the chairman and the controller have been the subcommittee that has been overseeing this process on behalf of the board. And I would hope that as we continue this journey, that we get to the destination, while we're trying to get to the destination, that we'll have that same kind of overview from this subcommittee, because the work that you've been engaged in, I know, has been time-consuming, and it's not been effortless, and it's been a challenge for everyone. And so I guess what I want to say is thank you to the chairman, thank you to the controller for being our eyes and ears while we weren't there. And, I look forward to having nothing but positive reports from now on. We had enough of the angst before, but thank you to all.
Thank you, Mr. Persant. And I do know that Graham and the controller and myself, we've talked about, and we certainly will be looking for some feedback. I think a couple of board members, if I recall correctly, at the last meeting, what the appropriate cadence will be in terms of reporting to the board between meetings so that the appropriate information is coming to us at the right time with not too much information, not too little information. And we're going to be looking to probably speaking with Amy McDuffie, our governance consultant, working with Graham, and maybe a couple of board members might get contacted in terms of really coming up with the right cadence and information that can be communicated to us as we're moving forward. Yeah, thank you very much. So this is an action item. There is a resolution attached. There are no other board members in the queue, so I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Controller Yee, seconded by Mr. Tang. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, Jennifer, would you take the roll, please?
Controller Yee?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson? Aye. Mr. Persant?
Yes.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Erden?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next item, item 5, is the proposed 23-24 operating budget. Julie Underwood. This is an information item. And after this item, we'll take probably a 10-minute break. So just an FYI. Julie, good morning. Would you introduce your colleague?
Good morning. For the record, Julie Underwood, Chief Financial Officer, and I am here with Pritpal Baines. She is our Senior Financial Planning Manager. And we're presenting the proposed 23-24 operating budget concepts. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to recognize that putting together operating budget concepts is a huge undertaking. It takes Pritpal and her team months and months to make sure that we're all being fiscally responsible and that we're ensuring that we have the proper justification for all of the resources and funding that we are requesting as an organization. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank her and her team for all the hard work that they've done putting together the operating budget concepts before you today. So thank you. All right, here we go. So this is a slide to remind you of what we've been through the last 3 budget cycles. So we have, over the last 3 years, been being fiscally prudent, reducing our costs, and severely limiting our requests to you for resources. That did cause us to have to reassess our priorities and our workload during that time. Now, we also have a brand-new strategic plan that has lots of new great initiatives that we want to also accomplish. And so, for this upcoming budget year, the concepts does include a request for 56 positions at a cost of $8.6 million, as well as an additional $8.7 million for increases in technology expenditures. So that totals the $17.3 million. And as you can see from this slide, from a strategic plan perspective, Goal 2, the leading innovation and managing change area, really represents the largest portion of the request before you. So this slide shows you the breakdown of the 56 positions that we're requesting by business area. And in the board item before you today, it has high-level summaries of the key tasks that are to be performed. But there's a couple things that you wanted to point out related to the 56 positions for you. 21 of them will support our employer reporting to final benefit effort. And that is the work that we're doing for concerns about the adjustments to member benefits after retirement. Now, these positions will allow us to do more in the areas of following up on systemic audit issues for all members, conducting more pre-benefit account reviews, and providing employer support and guidance to expand our work on minimizing reporting errors. Separate from the 21, there's 2 positions that will support member services associated with service retirements. There's 14 positions that will support compliance and risk management efforts throughout the organization. Those are doing things like monitoring adherence to policy, legal requirements, and contract terms, as well as ensuring that our cybersecurity program keeps up with risks. There's 14 more positions that will support administrative and support activities for tasks such as change management efforts, overall technology enhancements, and making sure we have the resources to do those extra video requests and media products like you saw this morning. That was just fabulous. The team did a great job on that. And then there's 5 positions out of the remaining 56 to support the collaborative model efforts for compensation support and establishing a unit dedicated to improving technology processes to advance investment analytics and decision-making capabilities. And I did want to mention, because these are for the collaborative model, these 5 positions were not contemplated in the original investment management BCP that you approved a couple years ago. And that's because we didn't want to backload a bunch of non-investment administrative support staff to support the collaborative model, because we wanted to kind of wait and see how that implementation was going to take place and how much additional support they would need outside of the investments branch. So that's why you're seeing these 5 positions today. These are for the 4 for the technology services area and 1 for HR. So regarding the $8.7 million that's asked for the technology increases, $4.9 million is for the cloud data center platform services, and that's to move us to that virtual data center. $1.2 million is for various cybersecurity tools and infrastructure support. $1 million is to modernize the network for the member call center system support, and that's to ensure we're working to improve our customer experiences and improve that satisfaction for those calls coming into our call center. And then the remaining 1.6 is for various software license and subscription costs. Now, in addition to the concepts, the proposed operating budget will also include other budgetary changes that net to a reduction of $2.2 million, and that includes the $9.9 million for the investment management BCP. This is the 3rd year of the plan, and in the 3rd year, we will receive 21 positions through that plan that's already been approved. For state mandates, we've estimated that at $1.4 million. That is for our pro rata assessment that we're assessed through the Department of Finance, as well as net increases to salaries and benefits per our contract bargaining unit agreements. But then the reduction is mainly due to the $13.5 million for property management services. Those are for one-time costs in last year's budget for the JLL contract. And because it's one-time costs, then that needs to roll off the budget for this year, resulting in covering all of the increases in this area. So if you take that negative 2.2 plus the 17.3 that we're asking for the concepts, the overall operating budget projected as it stands right now is increasing by $15.1 million. That's an increase of 4% over the prior year budget. From a position perspective, those 77 positions, so again, that's the 56 that we're asking for in the concepts, plus the 21 that's already approved to support the ongoing collaborative model implementation, that increases our positions by 6%. So there are two other areas that I just wanted to make you aware of, since they'll be more significant and will or may cause increases to the concepts provided to you today, is, of course, you know about the Pension Solution Project, as Bill mentioned. We want to, or will need to, increase the budget to get that project to completion, but we want to wait a little bit longer, get that procurement further along so that we can come back with a really good estimate for what we think that might cost to finish that project. So worst case, we'll come back in March. We have to do it by March because we need to get into the May revise process with the state to ensure that we're including that amount in the Budget Act so that we can have those funds available on July 1st. So we'll keep you updated on that. Then we have Assembly Bill 1667. If the governor signs that, that will require additional resources separate from the employer reporting to final benefit efforts that we want to accomplish. That legislation deals with overpayment liabilities, guidance CalSTRS provides to employers, as well as our audit and appeals processes. And Joycelyn's going to provide you with more details on that in just a few minutes in her legislative update. So with that, today's item is informational, but we are asking for your input so that we can include any of your feedback in the final proposed budget that we will bring back to you at the November board for approval. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Controller Yi.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks, Julie, for the report. Just a general question with respect to a time frame that it's taking now to fill positions. We're talking about a lot of positions here, and so I just want to be sure that within a budget year that it's feasible that all these positions can be filled.
Well, that's a really good question. We are doing our best. We have an amazing human resources team that works with everyone in the organization when we have recruitments to assist us in the best way to minimize the amount of time it takes to fill the positions that we're recruiting for. I can't sit here and tell you 100% that we'll find everybody when we do that first round of putting the item out for recruitment. But we will do our best on July 1st when we get those positions. In fact, we do some pre-work ahead of time to try to get ahead of it, to try to maximize trying to get those positions filled, because we have a lot of work we have to do. And so it's really important that we have the right team in place to assist us and try to find the right people for those positions.
Yeah, and I know it's been difficult just in terms of the pandemic and kind of expectations about work and how we, just are recruiting. And it really also, I think, speaks to, and for some of these positions, the pipeline. And I don't know if you have anything more granular about just kind of an existing pipeline for some of the more specialized positions.
We have seen a little bit of an uptick in our turnover rate that we're keeping an eye on. We are starting to see recruitments taking longer. We hope that's not a trend, but we are keeping an eye on it.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Controller Yi. So, seeing no one in the queue, I'm just curious. Yesterday, we talked about the collaborative model. We heard about the role of the private asset classes and the need to be able to attract and retain talent. This morning, we heard a presentation about the leasing challenges that we're facing relative to our expansion. This is an item that's dealing with budgetary and what the organization needs in terms of the employees to deliver the mission as we evolve. And what I see in common across those three topics, and there are others as well, including compensation that I see how that would connect as well, is, and I'm not smart enough to know the answers. And my view is none of us are. There are a lot of pundits out there who actually think they know, but I don't think we fully realize how we have been fundamentally changed as a result of what we went through for 2.5 or 3 years. Maybe we'll go back to life 2019 when we're in a deep recession and their unemployment rate is at 8 or 6 or 7. But maybe we won't. And how do we, how are we thinking about how people work, where they work, how are we going to get, a lot of people I think have reevaluated what's important to them, the workforce. So I want to be sure that we're challenging ourselves to be sure that when I start thinking that the world tomorrow is going to be exactly how it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, someone says, well, maybe it won't be, Harry, and how do you think about that then? So no answer, but only questions and curiosity as to, do we challenge ourselves as a board, as an organization, to say, this is how we did our budget years ago, and how should we be thinking about budgeting going forward? How should we be thinking about a building that is an office building, but will it be an office building in 5 years? Do we need everybody in private equity working in West Sacramento? We can't, so these are the things I think we have to be thinking about. And as you presented, and as Controller Yee raised, we all know that there are challenges finding people to take good jobs. Will that change? I don't know. I love listening to the pundits who think they know. They can tell us how it's going to be. They're convinced. I don't think we know. So I just hope we're asking the right questions.
That's a perfect setup for the work that we're going to be doing at the offsite when we're going to be talking about innovation and the innovation and strategy and what we're going to be considering and how we're approaching work and how we're going to look in the future. So there's a lot of content, I think, that's going to hit exactly that, and that's why we have such a huge focus on innovation and strategy, because we don't know what we're going to look like in the future, and we really want to be deliberate in driving our future and not being reactive to our future. So we're excited about all of the work that we're going to be doing there.
That's terrific, Cassandra. And one other thing I hope we continue to challenge ourselves on, and I know it's inside our strategic plan, is how we're thinking about filling these positions with diversity, equity, inclusion, issues that we've talked about and we've embraced in the strategic plan. How do we think about making sure that the people who work in this building, the people that manage the capital on behalf of us, actually are reflective of a diverse group of people? And I know we do, but I want to make sure that that's front and center in our continuing conversations. And I can see how those issues connect. So no action here today. Be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Why don't we take a 10-minute break until 10:30, and we'll come back at 10:30.
Perfect.
for some of the Terrific. I think we all have our computers reset and rebooted. Item 6 is the Enterprise Risk Management Report. It's an information item. Bill?
Good morning. My name is Phil Burkholder. I manage your Enterprise Risk Management Program here at CalSTRS. And I'm here to present to you our semi-annual report as of June 30th, 2022. I'm just going to cover the highlights today. I got a couple slides, which is new for us. We don't usually do slides, but we thought we'd try the visual aids and see if it helps me. Hopefully it'll help you too, but it's definitely going to help me. All right. So what I've shown on the screen here is our heat map that we've been showing you for a number of years now. This heat map represents management's assessment of the enterprise level risks at CalSTRS as of June 30th. A couple things to note here. If we needed any more evidence that life is very volatile and the environment is constantly changing, in the 3 years we've presented this heat map to you, we've never had more than a half of the risk categories in the medium or higher range. In this particular heat map, we actually have 6 risk categories that are in a medium or higher. So that's the first time that we've had that. There are 4 risk categories that have changed since the last time we reported to you. And there were really 3 drivers for those changes. The first was just volatility in the global financial markets, created the change for the pension funding investments change. We heard earlier that there's an uptick in organizational turnover, and that is what's driving the operational risk rating change. And then the delays associated with the Pension Solution Project, those are driving the reputational and transformational rating changes on this slide. Now, in the report, in attachment 2 of the risk score report, we have details associated with each of the risk categories. If you haven't already seen those details do exist there. So the emerging risk universe map, this is figure 1 on page 6 of item 6. And we've shown this to you before. For some of you this will be familiar, some of these maybe not. This is a tool that the organization uses to evaluate and monitor our emerging risks. And you'll see on this slide, we've got both emerging risks and existential risks. The emerging risks are plotted on the radar screen, with CalSTRS being in the middle, and the distance from CalSTRS to the dots representing the emerging risks represents how long we think it takes before those risks may manifest themselves here at CalSTRS. You'll also notice that through the yellow highlighted dots, we've moved a few since the last time we shared this with you. And those are really the result of shifts in the risk environment, both internally and external environments. So as an example, the inflationary pressures and geopolitical disruptions have gotten closer to us since the last one we reported because obviously the Russia-Ukraine war is continuing. We've got additional tensions between the US and China around Taiwan. And then obviously the heightened inflationary pressures just have continued and look like they will continue. So we have moved those. And for within the item on page 6, we actually have some details around why we moved each of these there also. So I won't cover all of that. There's also one other change on the radar screen. We added dot 12, which is, we added that to recognize that there could be a change or difficulties obtaining cyber-related insurance in the future. This is something, you notice we got this outside the 2-year mark, so it's out there a ways. But it's something our ISO team is keeping a very close eye on, and we'll bring it to you. If there's things changed and they need to bring it to your attention, they will do that in the future. The one thing we haven't talked about yet is existential risks. Now, those are things we did talk about the last opportunity to speak with you in March. And since then, we have been exploring those, having really robust conversations in some cases about some of these. We do want to also include you in some of these discussions. And so what we've done is we've been able to obtain a speaker to come to you at the board October offsite to talk about artificial intelligence. And we really hope that'll help kind of frame the conversation around innovation too, which will also help then. So hopefully that'll kind of bring everything together so we'll have just add more value to those discussions at the October offsite. So that concludes my prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Philip. Controller Yi. Betty?
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the report. A question regarding the category 7, the operational elements, and there was some discussion about staff turnover. I want to see if you could provide a little bit more context around why, or I guess the reasons behind the 12% turnover, whether that's concentrated in particular business units or is it across the enterprise?
Well, I'm happy to let Melissa talk to it also. So
Julie Underwood, Chief Financial Officer, and Melissa can come up if I'm not saying something right. But for the turnover, it is across all areas. For retirements, involuntary, voluntary, we're seeing just a small uptick, like I mentioned earlier, in all the categories that we are keeping a close eye on. But while it is higher, our target's 10%. So we're at 12.1. So that's why we're just keeping an eye on it to see if it's something that's going to get worse or if it's just, because of the environment that we're in right now, and then it'll sort of settle down. So we're just it's on here because it's just something that we're looking at and monitoring.
No, I appreciate it being on here. I just want to be sure it wasn't concentrated in particular business units where it
No, it's across the board.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And the voluntary turnover is just around the 7% range. So we're seeing more retirements this last year too, which is driving that increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at this emerging risk universe map, you have the existential risk, things that we should be thinking about. And one of those is a shift in pension fund investment management. I'm curious, I don't know what that means.
So, I'm still on. Okay, sorry. I thought I turned off my mic. So that one was something I've seen in other states. Our model is to have both the investment and pension benefit administration together in one organization. We see it at CalPERS, we see it here at CalSTRS. Other states don't have that. They'll have all the investments housed under one organization in their state, and all of the pension systems use that. So while that's not something we've seen here in California, it is in other places in the U.S. And so we included that as something to at least consider and to think about.
Thank you. And then there's one item that I see as somehow having an impact, not somehow, but could have an impact on our funding plan, and that is the reduction in the number of teachers leaving the teaching profession and its impact on local school districts and also members' dues and the like.
So that has come up in both the demographic shift concept that's on there as the existential risk, and also come up in our shift to alternate education. It has come up as both consequence and a driver for each of those. So yeah, I think you're right on point.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Any other questions or comments? Philip, this is a terrific report every year. It's critically important to our risk oversight responsibilities. And the slide here, this one is, it's really a great visual. And as the existential threats, if they become more and more heightened, we'll have time for discussion on those. But this is a really great report for us to have some visibility into how you're thinking about the risks and our role in monitoring and overseeing it. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Next item, item 7, sustainability principles across the enterprise. Love seeing a member of the investment staff here, our deputy CIO, along with executive staff Lisa Blatnick, presenting together.
It's almost like pillars coming together.
We've also got our consultant, our sustainability consultant. that's
Bring them up.
On screen by
Oh,
video.
okay.
So I'm looking back to see if we've got him engaged yet. So Scott, if you want to go ahead and get started, I just want to make sure that he's on the line. Okay, he is on the line, so go ahead.
All right, great. Well,
His name is Brian Novak. He is the Managing Director and CFO of the ICES Group, and he is our sustainability consultant internally.
Well, welcome, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, members of the board. I'm excited to be here presenting with Lisa Blatnick. And we're going to address how we are integrating sustainability across the organization in investments and across the enterprise. I'm going to provide a brief introduction. Lisa then will talk about CalSTRS as a sustainable organization. And then we'll have Brian, who we just introduced, talk about how we are going to measure, and manage our emissions on an enterprise level. Yesterday, you approved a number of recommendations in the investment committee, including a 20% target allocation to the MSCI Low Carbon Index. That was a significant and tangible step for us in our journey to achieve net zero carbon emissions in our portfolio by 2050 or sooner, and in our interim goal of achieving a 50% reduction by 2030. But as we were discussing yesterday, the investment portfolio can't do it alone. We are going to need the help of regulators, governments, corporations. All of us as consumers need to change our behavior, and enterprises like CalSTRS. And so Lisa is going to talk more about how we are working as an organization, as an enterprise, to also move to net zero by 2050 or sooner as the organization. Now, I just wanted to give one simple example of how we're integrating, and that's in the Scope 3 emissions. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. We're engaging companies and regulators. In fact, our SIS team wrote a letter to the SEC that we want to mandate corporations disclose not only Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, but Scope 3. So I'm very encouraged that today we'll talk about how, as an organization, as CalSTRS, we will be tracking and measuring our own Scope 3 emissions and developing a plan for that as well. I think that I'd like to coin a phrase from Controller Betty Yee, that this is leadership. I mean, when we can integrate and say to our companies and our portfolio companies, our managers, and say, you know, we want you to disclose this, and we're doing it ourselves. We're leading by example. From the start of Cassandra's appointment, she's had a clear direction and vision, and that is to integrate sustainability across the organization as reflected in our strategic plan. As a result, we've been very intentional. We've been coordinating with both, as an example, with investments and the enterprise. We've been learning together in our efforts, sharing knowledge. And I believe there's a lot of great collaboration that's going on. I wanted to validate that. But before I end, I do want to call out the great work that Lisa Blatnick is doing, that Rhonda Lenchi is doing, and my team, certainly Kirsty, Brian, they're very impressed with what's going on at the enterprise level. So with that being said, I'd love to hand it off to Lisa.
Thanks, Scott. You took some of my lines. That's okay. So at the April board meeting, the offsite, the board requested regular updates on how we plan to integrate sustainability considerations across the enterprise. And we've been working with an enterprise sustainability consultant who's on the line with us today since June of 2021. So we've been doing a lot of work in this area for a while now. So it's not new to us. But we want to make sure that we're assessing our maturity and we're identifying gaps in our operations, and in an effort to continue to improve our program and align internal operations with what the great work in the investment team is doing to seek this across the portfolio. So this is the first update with a focus on strategic plan goal number 3, which is sustainable organization. And today we're going to discuss the work we're doing in the areas of how we plan to operationalize environmental, social, and governance principles across the enterprise. And then in March, we're going to be coming back, Scott and I, to discuss the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which happens to be one of my favorite topics. So staff has developed a 3-year sustainability roadmap in alignment with the fiscal year 22-25 strategic plan. And one of the first exercises we completed was developing a value chain map. So a value chain is the range of activities carried out by an enterprise and by entities that are upstream and downstream to bring products or services from their conception to their end use. So here we see on this slide our primary and support activities in the first 2 rows, followed by value add benefits in our underlying foundational activities. Now, this value chain map helps us evaluate strategic decisions, including innovation and creating additional services for our members and our employees. So each year we present our sustainability report at the March board meeting for the prior fiscal year, and we identify and report on material topics that reflect the enterprise's significant economic, environmental, and social impacts. Our last report marked our 8th year in transparently reporting our progress, utilizing the Global Reporting Initiative's standards. So to make this report even better, with the help of the ISOS group, we've benchmarked ourselves against pension peers and best practices organizations. We conducted subject matter expert interviews for each business unit representing members, employers, and employee stakeholders. And then we validated the highest priority topics with our executive sustainability team. And based on those results, we've identified some additional sustainability topics for the current strategic cycle. Previous topics always will remain a priority: member retirement, education, full funding, transition to net zero, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what we've added now is privacy and information security, sustainable operations, and employee and human capital management. So you will see all of these topics with relevant measures in our upcoming sustainability reports. But today we're going to talk about greenhouse emissions, which is something that we talked a lot about yesterday. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Brian, our consultant, to continue the presentation.
Brian Novak here, Managing Director at ISOS Group, one of the team members supporting CalSTRS in this effort. We've been engaged to support its integration of sustainability across the organization, and one part of our engagement includes an inventory of CalSTRS enterprise greenhouse gas emissions, which excludes the investment portfolio in terms of our scope. The aim is to develop a starting point to understand the entire value chain of enterprise emissions, which we can then refine for potential reduction targets. I'll be walking through our work this far. The process is divided into these 3 stages. First, discovery, really to introduce key concepts in the landscape of greenhouse gas or GHG reporting with key subject matter experts within CalSTRS. In this stage, we're also been working to better understand the organization's operating context and existing systems and data management processes. Second is to inventory and assess the relevance of different sources of GHG emissions, gather underlying data, and develop an inventory management plan to serve as a guide to how the inventory was derived and aid in the development of future inventories. This step also included an assessment of the organization's current practice of reporting Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Finally, emissions data management to apply generally accepted GHG accounting principles to produce the enterprise greenhouse gas emissions inventory, again, which excludes the investment portfolio for our scope. And this footprint will be broken down by scope and category of emissions, which I'll jump into next. The graphic on the next slide here is developed by the World Resource Institute's Greenhouse Gas Protocol, considered the leading standard for developing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. We'll see the 6 greenhouse gases included across the top of the graphic. Emissions from these gases are grouped into 3 scopes based on the underlying activity generating those emissions. Scope 1 emissions are from direct sources that are owned or controlled by the organization. We can think about this such as the combustion of fuel, most often natural gas to heat buildings or fuel to power company-owned vehicles. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions from the generation of electricity purchased by the organization. And Scope 3 are other indirect emissions that occur up and down the organization's value chain. In this graphic, you'll see there are several, actually 8 upstream activities or categories and 7 downstream activities and categories. While there are generally accepted practices in calculating emissions for Scope 3 categories, within each, there's a hierarchy of calculation methods. And based on the maturity of this effort with CalSTRS, some of the Scope 3 calculations at the moment will use estimates. So to the next slide, we'll start with the more straightforward scope, Scope 1 and Scope 2. State agencies are required to annually report the Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions in the Climate Registry Information System, or CRIS, which CalSTRS has done since 2005. Here you'll see the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from HQ activities, which has been reported in the 21-22 Sustainability Report, covering calendar year 2020. Below that, you'll see how purchased renewable energy certificates, or RECs, impact the total reported net Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Moving on to Scope 3, again, emissions stemming from upstream supply chain and downstream end-use activities. According to CDP, formerly the Carbon Disclosure Project's Global Supply Chain Report in 2020, suppliers reported that their upstream emissions, or their supply chain emissions, were on average 11.4 times greater than those produced through direct operations. In simple terms, Scope 3 emissions are often orders of magnitude larger than Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Previously, CalSTRS has reported on Scope 3 emissions from one category, business travel, which is considered an upstream emissions category. What we've done is we've gone through and assessed CalSTRS operations and determined the inventory shall include these 6 Scope 3 categories. Furthermore, we found that the procurement of goods and services, particularly services, was the greatest contributor to the enterprise's estimated greenhouse gas emissions. This inventory is really just a starting point. Scope 3 accounting methodologies are evolving, and we expect the data availability specific to CalSTRS and data quality to improve over time. And as these changes occur, we'll refine our reporting, first targeting the procurement of services to expand, and then expand the refinement in reporting to other Scope 3 categories as well. So with that, I'll hand it back to Ms. Blattman.
Great, thank you, Brian. So we need to develop a management plan to operationalize greenhouse gas data tracking while seeking reduction opportunities. So it's one thing to track it, but we've got to make sure we have a reduction plan. And it's important that we seek quality partners throughout the procurement of goods and services who are aligned with our values. Now, that's something new, right? And when you think about Scope 3, and we talk, Scott talked about the help that they're going to need on the investment side. From an operational side, we need help as well. And so one of the first things that we think we're going to do when we tackle the procurement of goods and services is we're going to go ahead and send out a survey to our existing vendors. And we're going to see how mature they are in their sustainability efforts within their own organizations, not just tracking it, but do they have plans in place to reduce? And from there, working with our legal team, we're going to determine what next steps we'd like to take. We'll take that data that we get back, we'll set a baseline. And if we're finding that there's many vendors that we're doing business with now that are mature in this area, we may add it to our minimum qualifications in our solicitations. If not, if we don't add it as minimum qualification, perhaps we provide preference points to organizations that have a sustainability plan and they're actively working on reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. So that's going to be what we're going to be doing first step as we look through how we can improve the relationship with our suppliers. And then finally, we look forward to the HQE's solar panels on the building. That's going to really reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions, especially our scope 2 emissions. And so we'll have more information on this for you in 2023, but we expect that solar panel will give us, those solar panels will give us the energy that we need to almost provide the energy that we need for both buildings. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Blatnick. We do have a couple of board members with questions or comments, beginning with Mr. Prasant, then Controller Yee. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm always impressed with the amount of progress that we are making on this front, and I commend the interaction between both the investment staff and the operational staff of the organization in pursuing this and coming up with again, tools that we can measure, our footprint, our fossil fuel footprint. One of the questions, I just have one question because I'm always sort of amazed that we're engaging in a means by which we can measure these fossil fuel emissions. And there on the slide that is the greenhouse gas protocol scopes and emissions across the value chain, there's a source that is mentioned there, WRI, WBCSD, corporate value chain. What organization is, explain that source. Who is it? What do they do? This is one of the tools we're using.
So Brian, are you on the line? I think that's probably a question that you can answer.
Yes, I am. I'm Brian Novak here. So that is the WRI, is the World Resources Institute, a part of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And they operate in a few different areas, but one is in standard setting. So this goes back to the early 2000s, I believe, if not earlier, where the initial greenhouse gas protocol was developed, which really gave guidance to organizations in terms of how to develop a greenhouse gas inventory that would be consistent and comparable across organizations. They continue to update their methodology as new information is available or as the landscape changes, but really a leading organization on that front. I'm happy to send more information regarding the broader scope of their work if you'd like.
That tool in measuring?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that.
Are there other tools that you utilize in measuring the greenhouse gas emissions?
The World Resources Institute's protocols are really the leading standard, and I would say in terms of how we go about the calculation methodology, we follow WRI. Within each category, as mentioned, there's a hierarchy of methodologies to calculate the emissions from an activity. Could be from dollars spent to miles traveled, and within each of those methodologies, we may use some different tools that are available, several through the US EPA. So quite a few different ways to go about it, but this reporting standard would be kind of the underlying foundation of the methodology.
Just a final question. I assume that this is uniformly being accepted within the industry?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Controller Yi?
Great. Thank you, Harry. This is leadership. This is phenomenal, particularly the focus on Scope 3 emissions, which I know has been so difficult on both sides, from enterprise as well as investments. And, to really kind of do as much as we can to try to get to the data that we need to just see how to put our plans going forward is really important. So I am very hopeful that this can be an example of how companies can also begin to do their work. But I think the data and the quality of the data and what we have to work with is going to be really key, which is why this WRI framework is widely recognized. So I don't have an issue with that. I think what I do have an issue with is really, as you begin to survey suppliers, it's going to be probably a mixed bag. And so my question is, I hope we don't resort back to kind of just general sector kind of assumptions about what's going on with Scope 3 emissions, but really with what is reported. Hopefully there's really useful data. But are we going to at some point rely on modeling to kind of get to kind of the best data that we can get, or are we going to I just don't want to kind of repeat what we've been seeing in terms of the reporting that's been done, and Scope 3 understandably being very difficult, but it is a big piece of the emissions, kind of challenge. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There was Senate Bill 1203 is on the governor's desk right now.
Yeah.
To be signed, and of course that deals with the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Right. Scope 3 emissions, like you said, are a little bit more difficult. And so, I think that working with Brian Novak and ISO's group, we're going to, again, determine what are the right questions to ask in the survey to make sure we get the best information back, and how do we validate that and verify that to make sure that we're really asking the right questions. And so that's why we're going to rely on the experts to make sure that we ask the right questions to make sure we get the right data back. Yeah. I think one of the challenges is going to be too is how we I think it's coming for all state agencies. I mean, we're starting with Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and I think Scope 3 is going to probably be the next thing that we're going to be required to be looking at. And so I think that we're ahead of the curve. And again, I think that we'll just have to work with the people that have the expertise to make sure that we're asking the right questions and we have the ability to validate the information we're getting back. Yeah. So.
Okay, and maybe I'll ask the same question to Brian, just to see whether he has any observations about where there's been some progress with respect to how we look at Scope 3 data.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Yi. I would say when we start to develop the inventory, we certainly use some estimation, underlying assumptions, and work with the information that is readily available to get started, really understand an order of magnitude, and work through that assessment to determine which categories are material and relevant for CalSTRS to disclose upon. And from there, we can then work to refine the inventory, the underlying data, and that's really what this survey would be, one of those first steps in beginning to refine the data quality that we have. So it certainly is a journey, and we have a good start here, but there's still a ways to go. And presumably, as there's higher expectations for organizations more broadly, the quality and the information that we'll receive in turn will enable us to also develop a stronger inventory from the Scope 3 perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, obviously, some of the other Scope 3 categories are much easier to, ascertain relative to data, but this whole kind of value chain, upstream, downstream, is just, we've just got to crack that somehow. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick process question. Maybe I didn't hear it earlier. When would the survey go out?
Well, we're working on a timeline for that. There is a timeline established, but I really don't know it off the top of my head. Rhonda, do you know? Okay.
Top suppliers.
Okay. We don't know when the survey for all of vendors will go, but we are going to be sending out an initial survey to our top suppliers. So those people that we're spending the most money with, we're going to start with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions, comments from the board? Seeing none, thank you for the report. It's good to see the presentation and the outside consultant working with us. Thanks very much, Scott. Thanks, Lisa. And thanks for joining us, Brian. Our next item is the state and federal legislation. Samantha, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Samantha, how many members of the public do we have want to speak on this item?
We have, let me see, I believe we have 17.
How many?
17?
17. Okay, so we have 17 members of the public that would like to address us on this issue. So I want to set expectations. We have in our policy and regulations allocated 10 minutes for items that are on our agenda to be spoken to. What I'd like to do, what we will do, is we will allocate 1 minute per speaker. And if anyone signs up during the item with a maximum of 30 speakers. So currently we have 17 members of the public who would like to speak to us on this item. We will allocate 17 minutes, 1 minute for each speaker. It will be monitored by Samantha. And if other callers call in, we'll max out at 30. With that, Joycelyn, let me turn it over to you.
Mr. Chair, good morning. Joycelyn Martinez-Wade, Director of Governmental Relations. And I have to say this is fortuitous timing because the 2022 legislative session just ended late last night. And so I have updates for you on bills that we've been tracking for your position. And I'm going to start with that. And then I have an action item for you that we'll take up second. And so first, I want to mention that let me start with SB 1402 on military service credit purchases. That bill has actually already been signed by the governor. So we'll be working on implementing that one. Our housekeeping bill, AB 1824, and SB 868, which provides additional benefits through the supplemental benefit maintenance account, have both made their way to the governor. And there is a bill that popped up at the end of session, as they want to do sometimes. SB 1089 was gutted and amended, as we say. And so the previous contents were pulled out, and what was put in was a extension to the sunset date for the Turkish divestment statute. It's extended by 10 years. And so that bill also made it to the governor. And then, unfortunately, SB 1343, which is the bill that mandates CalSTRS participation for charter schools, was not able to make it off of the assembly floor yesterday. So that's the roundup of the bills that we've taken positions on for the most part this year. And if there aren't any questions on that, I can move into the action item. So this is AB 1667, which you've gotten some brief updates on. You have an analysis before you. It's quite lengthy. There's a lot to this bill. But what I am recommending, and what you can see there on the first page of the analysis, is that the board take a support position on the bill. As you had heard earlier, this bill deals with overpayment liability, the guidance that we provide to employers, and the audit and the appeals processes that we undertake. I want to make a couple of notes in addition to the analysis. I did want to note that the Department of Finance did take an opposed position on the previous version of the bill. It's not noted in the analysis, so it's an oversight I wanted to just make mention of. And then I wanted to discuss the program cost analysis that is on page 8 of attachment 1, which is the analysis you have before you, and wanted to make mention of the approximation of potentially 50% of the errors being system errors and 50% being employer errors, and this has to do with determining liability for overpayments if this bill goes into effect, if the governor signs it. I want to make sure you know that we looked at a finite 5-year period. We looked at unmodified service retirement benefits. This is different than the ARM committee report that is provided in November that covers a myriad of underpayments and overpayments. This really narrows in on year-over-year changes, which are meant to reflect what this bill is after, which is unexpected changes in benefits, not regular course of business as you might expect. And so during that period, We looked at members who had been retired for more than 3 years, using as a proxy if they had an overpayment with some write-off, which then essentially means that under our statute of limitations, that was considered a system error. This period of 5 years did cover some significant data cleanup efforts related to our pension solution project, as well as a delayed legislative implementation, which I think increased the numbers. If you remove those efforts from the mix, the percentage of system error goes down to 4% over those 5 years. So wanted to give you some of that context. And then bringing it back up to the bill as a whole, I first want to say that there has been a lot of work that has gone into this over the last several months. So there's been a lot of us who have been working on this very closely. The August 25th version, which is the one that's in print that has gone to the governor, consists of amendments that have brought CalSTRS into agreement with the sponsors, which of course is why I'm here asking for the support position. And I just want to thank everyone who's been working on this. And I kind of wanted to call out a few people specifically because there was a focused negotiation team that worked on it. And on the sponsor side, it included Jennifer Baker from the California Retired Teachers Association, Seth Bramble from the California Teachers Association, and Derek Lennox from the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association. And from CalSTRS, it included Jeff Zimmer from Employer Services, Brian Sitzma from Legal, and from my team in Governmental Relations, John Meredith Simkowick, Meredith Bartles, and Sal Sanchez. And I'm sure behind the sponsors, those three folks, but definitely behind the folks at CalSTRS, there were dozens of people that we would go to get information and to get real-time estimates and things that we needed to make sure that we got to this place where we were in agreement on the amendments. And now the bill, while there is added complexity and costs that you'll note are in the analysis, it really does bring us to a place where we will have additional guidance for employers, equity for our members in the employer audit appeals process, reduced overpayment burden for our members, and a prudent source of funds to cover the cost of overpayments that protects the plan's funds and our tax qualified status. So with that,
thank you very much for the report and the acknowledgement of the people that have been involved with this item. On behalf of the board, this is an issue that our stakeholders have been engaged with our staff for years. And there's no issue more important, I would argue, to our members at this time than this issue. This is something that is extraordinarily complex. If there was an easy solution, it would have been solved a long time ago. The amount of work, energy, resources, advocacy, time that people have put into this is extraordinary. And to know that we are in support of this position, the recommendation by staff is to support, and that you've been able to all come together through an amendment process is an extraordinary feat. And if in fact it is signed into law, there's going to be an implementation, and there's costs associated with that. But I thought there was a need for an exclamation point in terms of how complex this issue is, how important this issue is to the members that we serve, and how much time has gone into getting us to where we are today. So a lot of people to thank for that. It's first and goal from the 10, and it still has a ways to go. So with that, we'll go to public comments. Samantha, if you could call the first member of the public.
Okay, so our first members of the public are actually going to be a group, so they will get 1 minute each. Together, they're going to get 2 minutes.
Before we do, Samantha, Ms. Bradford has a comment or question. Denise?
Thanks. Thanks, Harry. I just wanted to echo what Harry said. Oh, you have to.
Yeah, but you have to press in to request.
I did. Oh, there
you go.
There it is. Thank you. Okay.
I did.
It's been one.
Okay.
It's been a technology challenging day. So what can I say? I just wanted to echo what Harry and Joycelyn said and say thank you to all the staff that worked on this and kept the board briefed on it, et cetera. this has been a lot of work. I would equate it to the work that went into the funding plan, because everyone's been working on this for well over a year, and I'm so happy that we finally got it done. As a member of CalSTRS, it provides me some relief knowing that I won't be in appeals someday. So thank you very much to everyone. It's greatly appreciated, and I know implementation is going to be challenging, but I know that we'll all work together to make it work.
Thanks, Denise. So with that, Samantha, we'll turn it over to the members of the public. Before we do that, that's 2 false starts. Karen Yamamoto. Ms. Yamamoto.
Thank you. And I want to join with Denise, Joycelyn, and all the members of the CalSTRS staff and all the voluntary groups. And I know that the groups that came together did not necessarily work together previously. So I think that it really adds a comment to all the things that everyone had in common to make sure that the benefits, the resolution to the issue, the problems that were there, everyone wanted the same goal. Everyone wanted to make sure that everything was fair, equitable, and within the guidelines that have been set out. And I just can't stress the importance of, Jennifer Baker told me that this is monumental because not all these groups met together in one place at one time for the same goal. And everybody had their own little projects going. And so I really appreciate all the effort, all the hours and hours and hours, and all the sacrifices that everyone has made to come to this point. So like Harry says, I don't know much about football, but if Harry says we're at what?
For 10.
First
and goal.
First and goal?
Yeah.
I agree with that. So again, thank you very much, staff and all the people that are involved. Thank you so much.
Ms. Hendricks.
I'll just say.
Thanks, Karen.
Ditto. As a former member of the Appeals Committee, I agree with Denise's comments, and ditto to my fellow board members. So it's an exciting day.
Thank you so much. And in this day and age, for people to come together who have different views and different seats, different groups that they're representing, and to work through difficult issues, not to walk away, not to talk above each other, and actually come to a resolution that people can agree to is no small feat. It is really no small feat, especially in this day and age. So with that, we'll go to the public. Third time's a charm, right?
We're done now.
Okay, so our first members of the public are going to be in a group. Since they get 1 minute each, we're going to put up a timer for 2 minutes. They're going to speak together. So our first speakers will be Joe and Kevin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Bartel. I sit on the board of directors for the California Teachers Association. And I want to echo a lot of the sentiments that were just shared here a few minutes ago. Just thank you on behalf of the California Teachers Association to Joycelyn and her team for all the countless hours and days and effort that went into putting all this together. This was a very important issue for our members and something that truly needed to be addressed. And so we're very thankful for all of the work and effort that the governmental relations team and all the subsequent ancillary departments that were involved in this to getting this to where we are right now. And then Kevin.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Welch. I'm chair of the CTA Retirement Committee. CTA is sponsoring AB 1667 along with Cal RTA and the county superintendents, and we urge you to support this bill. This bill will require regular updates and guidance on how employers report to CalSTRS, and CTA hears about the errors from our members. Usually we get the call when their retirement benefits are modified and after retirement, sometimes years later. In some cases, the retiree has been forced to pay back the overpaid amount. Our membership has come to us with these stories for decades, stories of dedicating their lives to students and to learning communities and retiring with a contract that they have entered into a good faith when they retired, making plans for their futures only to find this agreement torn apart. placing a financial hardship on them that is no fault of their own. This bill may not help those who have already experienced the pain of having to rearrange their entire life and the lives of their families based on someone else's mistake, but we don't have to let this happen to any more educators. I urge you to support AB 1667. And in my district, with our association in the district, we always say we're better together. So I echo the board's comments earlier. We are better together. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So our second speakers will also be a group, and they will get 2 minutes as well. So our next speakers are Dawn and Orville.
NEA, yield the rest of my time to Orville Garrison.
Thank you, Don. I am Orville Garrison. I am the president of CTA NEA Retired here in California. And yes, we are here today to encourage you to support AB 1667. I was an English teacher for many years, and so I'm reluctant to inflict too much redundancy on you today. But I would say this, it is an extremely important bill, and it has taken a lot of time to get us to where we are. It is enraging to those of us who attempt to assist retirees when they bring these issues of what we commonly call CalSTRS clawback to us, especially given the current state of the law. We discovered that they are being penalized for errors that were made that they knew nothing about because they had no role to play in the creation of that error in the first place. Whether it be a school district misreporting or whether it be an error on the part of CalSTRS, the victim is the retiree who is going to have to pay, and they quite frankly can't understand the morality of that. I do, however, want you to take note of the fact that the bill has a particularly important additional element to it, and that is that it expands the ability of the retiree to appeal. And you may not know it, but in current circumstances right now, not all of the retirees who are afflicted by this clawback situation actually have a realistic opportunity to appeal. The language of this law will expand that ability. It'll provide them with timing and ability to research and find out whether or not they have a case in repeal, and it will make it much easier for them to accept the outcome. So yes, indeed, on behalf of statewide CTA NEA Retired, I do encourage the board to support AB 1667. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. So the remainder of our speakers will be speaking alone, so we'll change the timer to 1 minute. Our next speaker will be Dana.
I didn't hear her call my name, so I guess I'm next, right? Hello, my name is Dana Dillon, and I want to tell you 3 short stories that our members shared in policy committees as AB 1667 was moving through the legislature. And you have a handout with more detail. Tom Connery chose to retire early due to an incentive provided by his district. He later had to give almost his entire incentive back to CalSTRS because of a mistake made by his district. Georgia Moore had to repay CalSTRS $9,000 because of an 8-year-old mistake made by her district. Sue Camus had to pay more than $19,000 for an error that was made by her district. These were errors the members knew nothing about. I can tell you from experience, these issues are not new and have been the subject of conversations for years, like Harry said. I'm excited that we can finally resolve these problems, not for Tom, George, or Sue, but for our members in the future. Please support 1667, and I also would like to add my kudos to everyone that worked on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Mary Kay.
That's really tall. Hello, my name is Mary Kay Scheid, and I am one of hundreds of thousands of teachers and educators paying into CalSTRS with every paycheck. I'm speaking for all of us today when I ask you to support AB 1667. I've faced many challenges throughout my teaching career. I should not have issues with my retirement benefits and distributions following decades of public service. AB 1667 will protect retired educators by reducing employer miscalculations and reporting mistakes that are breaking The Pension Promise. AB 1667 seeks to protect these promised benefits by establishing a process that promotes accuracy and transparency. I'm urging you to support AB 1667, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Angelique.
Hi, my name is Angelique Hill. I'm the CEO of the California Retired Teachers Association, and I would like to urge support of AB 1667. I've been with the association for 30 years, and ever since 2009, I have heard hundreds of stories from members who've been impacted by these errors, and I think it's the least we can do for our members to give them these assurances. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Susie.
Hi, my name is Susie Dixon. I'm the President-elect and the State Chair of Government Relations for California Retired Teachers. I had to cut a whole bunch out, so I'm just going to speak from the heart for 1 minute. CalRTA has been working with CalSTRS and our other organizations on this for many years. It is such a proud moment to say that these three organizations have worked together to come up with a solution that protects our members. As you've heard from many, so many of our members in the past have been financially hurt by the fact that something that they had no control over. As an educator, I controlled my classroom. I controlled implementation of curriculum, of reports, of grades. I had no idea I was supposed to be responsible for my service credit and if it was correct. I assumed when I went to the CalSTRS retirement program that everything the district provided and that I was given was correct. Please support AB 1667. And again, thank you to all the organizations who have done this for all of us.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Barbara.
My name is Barbara LaPlaca, and I'm a CalRTA member from the State Capitol Division, and I'm also president of that division. And I am here to speak to support AB 1667. As a retired educator, I have been very concerned about the possibility of me being held financially responsible for an error I did not make. AB 67 will correct this wrong and give our retired educators a peace of mind they deserve. On behalf of CalRTA and Division 5, I urge you to support AB 1667.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Pat.
Okay. I'm Pat Geyer, and I too support AB 1667. People shouldn't be required to repay things that mistakes that were made by others and no fault of their own, particularly when they're a retiree and they're living on a very, very limited income. And so I urge you to support AB 1667. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
My name is Carolyn Clark. I'm a CalRTA member from Division 5 here in Sacramento. However, before I retired, I worked for the Sweetwater High School District, which borders Mexico, and I worked for San Diego Unified. I worked for 32 years in that position. AB 1667 will correct the wrongs that has negatively affected financially myself and other members for our monthly CalSTRS pensions. In fact, for the next 25 years after moving to Sacramento, I was on the team that scored the tests that teachers have to take to get the credentials. So I got another job immediately, even though I was a retired teacher, which many teachers do. Most of the people on our team were retired teachers and had several credentials, which of course were required before we were hired to do those tests. CalRTA members have done everything that they were supposed to do in order to prepare for their retirement.
Thank you for your comment.
We trusted that the information from our CalSTRS.
Our next speaker will be Chuck.
All teachers that are retired in California, I urge you to support AB 1667. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Chuck.
Name is Charles Denon, and I'm a retired teacher from Grant High School in the local area and live in Roseville and represent the 3,000 retired educators who are a member of the California Retired Teachers Association in the Sacramento area. Simple word, it's fair. It's about being fair. But before I say anything else, though, I want to thank the board chair, board members, boards, and CalRTA staff who are paying attention to what we're saying. Thank you for showing respect for the members and what you're doing. But again, it is about fair. I came prepared to tell you the story. You know, oh, Chuck, I was asked to call you because you work with CalSTRS, right? Well, no, I know about CalSTRS and I'm a retired educator volunteer. Oh, but I have a problem. Can you fix it for me? That's happened twice on this issue. People calling me, wanting me to help them. One case, a 94-year-old lady who literally cried for 5 minutes when I said, I can talk to somebody for you, but that's about it. Thank you again for taking this issue forward and supporting the actions of the people who want to help all retired educators. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Mark.
You can't get a teacher to be quiet. I'm sorry about that. My name is Mark Allen. I'm a director for CalRTA. My area is from San Francisco to the Oregon border and to the foothills surrounding this valley. I remember when I first heard about this, I retired in 2008 and probably was in 2009 when I heard this was happening. And I'm so glad it's finally coming to an end. As a retired teacher, we appreciate your support in passing, make sure I get it right, 1667. Thank you. Look, I got 25 seconds more.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Clint.
Good morning. My name is Clint Ritchie, and I've been teaching I had taught for over 37 years, and I'm here to support the passage of 1667. By the way, I'm from Lincoln, California, part of CalRTA, and we want you to support this because people have paid into this system sometimes more than they need to, and we want you to that doesn't happen again, so people don't have to pay back something they didn't know that they had erroneously did not pay. So please support AB 67. I yield my time to the next speaker.
Okay, our next speaker will be Bob.
My name is Bob Gonzalez. I'm from Davis, California, Yolo County, Division 83. I've taught for 36 years, and years passed, and while I was in retirement, I started finding out personally of Davis teachers that were being required to give money back. I do want to thank you for the point we're at now in behalf of the 900,000 retired and active teachers. I think you're doing a marvelous job with our money, and this is showing us just how much you care about us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our last speaker will be Derek.
Hello, I'm Derek Lennox on behalf of the 58 county superintendents of schools from across the state. I'm also here on behalf of a number of educational employer organizations and individual school districts and county offices. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible work of the CalSTRS staff in partnering with us as co-sponsors and organizations. It has rebuilt so much trust between our two organizations, both us as business partners, the members, the retirees, and you all, the system administrators. And in particular, I want to name the individuals because we're so appreciative. Joycelyn Martinez-Wade, John Meredith Simkowick, Salvador Sanchez, Meredith Bartles, Brian Sitzma, and Jeff Zimmer. As county superintendents, we have a front row seat to what causes the errors in the first place as your primary business partners. I'm just delighted that this bill is going to take so many steps to mitigate the errors before they occur, right? So we're going to help the retirees, but also make sure that errors are reduced into the future. And for that reason, I hope you will consider supporting the bill. And thank you for all the supportive comments from the dais today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. That is the conclusion of public comment for item 8.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you, members of the public, for being here today. Sharon.
I just wanted a closing comment. Since this person can't make the public comment, I've been thinking about Loretta Toggenberger. She passed and left us 2 years ago. Dana, you made me cry today, but I'm just thinking it's always so great to hear our teachers, and I actually always look at her in the back corner, so it's just hard not seeing her anymore. And I think that was some of the inspiration of having the videos like we did this morning for Lance. Because I just think when we're reminded of who we do this for, everyone on the dais, when we have faces and stories, our attention is focused and our hearts and minds are focused on this important work. A lot of us have lots of other jobs and wear lots of other hats, but there's nothing more important than, in my world, of the role educators have played in each one of our lives, as well as making sure you all retire with some dignity and financial security. So I'm really proud of this bill, and I just wanted to I think Loretta would be the first person at the mic today, so I just wanted to acknowledge Loretta's voice in this room. On behalf of all the teachers that spoke today, we're just really honored to serve you on this board. And lovely to have Dana in the room as well. It just feels poetic. So thank you to everyone who helped work, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
The only amendment I would make is Dana will always be referred to as Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Madam
Ken.
Chair.
Yes, I don't know if this is the right time to do this, but I would like to be the one to make the motion for us to support AB 1663. As an educator, 67, sorry.
67. 63 was a good year, but 67.
So AB 1667, without any further comments, as an educator, as a teacher myself, this is definitely, it's about time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tang.
Can I second?
And it's been seconded by Ms. Yamamoto. So there's a staff recommendation for approval, a referral by support position by staff, and a motion by Mr. Tang, seconded by Ms. Yamamoto, to support. Before we move on to a vote or any further discussion, I see Mr. Gunning. Mr. Gunning.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a process question. We know session ended last night at 1 o'clock. Will we be submitting a letter to the governor in support, assuming the board approves the recommendation? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gunning. Seeing no one else in the queue, for this one, why don't we take a roll call?
Sure. Controller Yeet?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Yes.
Ms. Yamamoto?
I can't talk. Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Heck yeah.
Ms. Hendricks? Sorry, Ms. Hendricks?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Erden?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Ruffino?
Yes.
Ms. Whitaker?
Finance abstains.
And Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, Joycelyn. Again, thank you to everyone. And we'll see what happens next. What's that?
I have Kleenex over here.
Okay, with that, we are moving along to the consent agenda. A through D, that's 9A through 9D. I think I've been given a heads up, there will be a couple of polls for 9A through 9D. Any polls? Mr. Gunning?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the contract on DEI, I'd like further discussion or information about that.
Okay, so that's the contract on DE&I. Which item is that 9? Is that 9D? Yeah, 9D. So we pulled 9D. Any other polls? Ms. Yamamoto?
In total?
Yeah, let us know which ones you want to pull.
9D.
Okay.
Yeah, that's already pulled, but the amendments 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so is that, you're going to pull, we're going to pull the whole thing, okay.
Yeah, when you pull
That's
the
fine.
item, it's all the amendments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jennifer, help me out. What can we approve right now?
You have a 9A through C. And just
Okay.
a quick note, you do have a motion from the Benefits and Services Committee to adopt the amendments to the committee charter.
Okay, and that's part of it?
That's part of 9A, yes.
Okay, so 9A through 9C on consent without objection. Okay, those have passed. Jennifer? Okay, thank you. So 9D has been pulled by a couple of board members. I'll defer to Mr. Gunning first, and then we'll go to Ms. Yamamoto. Mr. Gunning. Plug in there, and then there we go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. I'm obviously still learning as my onboarding is just completed. But I guess one thought is, I know Grant Thornton's a good organization and we've used them here, but curious if there was any outreach to any minority firms or any other firms to partner with them, or if there's any other firms that we've looked at that could help in this subject.
Good morning, Melissa Norsha, Chief Administrative Officer. And for this RFP, we did have a kind of a wide reach, and we did get other firms that were interested. We actually had each of the firms participate in a survey whereby they did respond to our questions as it relates to what DE&I strategies they have in place also in their firm. And it's a competitive process. So we did interview, I think it was 3 total, and Grant Thornton and the consultants the key personnel that would be partnering with CalSTRS, it came out on top. And so we were really impressed with the consultants that we'll be working with. And so that was, it's a process, it's an interview process, it's a second interview. And so I think we did a really good job, due diligence, in making sure that we're partnering with a firm that can support us through this very comprehensive assessment.
Were there any women-owned or minority firms that bid?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gunning. Ms. Yamamoto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions have to do with the amendments 1, 2, and 3, and about the technology and the investment technology information. And I know that it's so complicated and there's so many different ways that we can do that. One of the things that I noticed was I wanted to ask the differences in the 3 amendments. How are they similar? And the language of all 3 were identical. So how do I know what's what and who's doing what? And then it seems like they're doing the same thing, but each of the line where it says the contract title, some of them say information technology audit, some of them say investment and information technology audit. So, I just have those questions going through my mind, so can you help me understand those?
I will do my best. So we have, Audit Services has a pool of contractors for specialty audits, ones that require that expertise, such as technology services, investments, information technology. So on these particular requests, once you're in the pool, these 3 firms are in the pool, and they all go through a competitive process to bid on certain projects. So what you're seeing when you see investment or information technology, that's the broader subject. There's specific titles for each of those that underlie those, such as real estate, private equity type audits, right? But we just generally categorize it as investments. So these 3 firms were reaching the threshold of over $1 million. That's why we're coming back to you. We track it, so I do have every single audit under Weaver, every single audit or project under Weaver, Grant Thornton, and CLA. What we found was our pool is used by others within the organization. So for that first amendment, we were at $950,000, and we want to bring it up. 25% of that expenditure was made by audits, and others, the 75% was made from others in the organization that utilized our pool for the expertise. Okay, same thing with Grant Thornton. We were at a lower amount of, and we've used them for various type of audits of around 400, I think. But we have since increased to 797,000. So again, we did an amendment. We utilized them for some investment type audits, and we're reaching close to the threshold. I can give you all the detail of all these, and then CLA, again, it's lower, but we were using them for specialty audits such as information security. Grant Thornton, 61% was towards audits. The rest were used by others within the organization. One of them was ECS, Enterprise Compliance Services. And then with Clifton Larson Allen, those were mainly used by audits. A little bit was used by ISO on a special project. So am I answering your question?
Well, yes and no. The language is the same, so I guess that's what I don't understand.
Because they're all in a pool, I can't tell you who and when will use those vendors because it's a competitive process. Okay. So we know they're nearing the threshold, and because of the process of going to that million coming back to the board, we want to ensure that we have that permission to utilize them for a greater amount. So when we do invite them and if we do select them, we don't have to come back, we don't have to wait to do that work. We can now select them and then engage them, right?
They're like in a waiting room. So then you can pull them when you need them for the specific audit.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a good way to say it.
Maybe in the future, Karen, we can be more specific in the write-up. I hear where you're coming from, and it does look as if they're all doing the same thing.
Right.
But because they are in a pool, they're working on different activities and projects within the organization. But I think
that's what I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think we could do better moving forward to make that more clear.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Cheryl, and thanks,
Thank
Lisa,
you.
for the addition. Appreciate it. So 9D is before us. Do a roll or no? Okay, without objection, let's see, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Abstention? Seeing none, the item 9D passes. Jennifer, do we have any items referred by the committee for decision? Thank you. Did we have any new business review or information requests?
I kind of tracked one on item 4. There was a request to include proposed timeframes in the future pension solution reports. I don't know if that's an official request or that's just going to be part of the next report.
Yeah, next report, and it's not thank you. Cassandra, do you want to highlight anything from the agenda from our next meeting, our future meeting?
So this is for the November meeting. We, of course, will have an October offsite in between today's meeting and the November meeting. The only thing that I wanted to highlight that we are adding is a closed session item that's going to be on the report on an analysis of board safety protocols. It's time for us to refresh the board's education in that arena, so we will be discussing that. That's it.
Great. Item 13 is opportunities for members of the public who would like to address the board on items that are not on today's agenda? No members of the public want to address the board?
There are no members of the public in queue right now.
Great. So brings us to the end of our open session meeting. We're going to break for lunch. We do like 35-minute lunch. Is that sufficient? 45. I see 45. I saw 35, 45. I'm usually like 2 hours. Go for a walk. All right, so we'll break for lunch from till 12:45. Closed session today will be in the back in the caucus room at 12:45. We will have 5 minutes at 12:45. We'll have a board-only closed session from 12:45 till approximately 12:50. That will just only be the board. And at 12:50, the appropriate staff and et cetera will join us at 12:50. So we'll have a 5-minute board-only closed session, 12:45. Enjoy your lunch, everyone. We'll see you later.